All right, Dream Think Doers, I'm especially excited about this one. Today, I'm honored and excited to have that's right, two guests for you, a beautiful couple. We've got Mark Victor Hansen and his wife, Crystal Dwyer Hansen. They've just written a book called Ask, The Bridge from Your Dreams to Your Destiny. And we're going to talk in depth about what they've learned about the art and science of asking better questions to transform your life. But before we go there, I want to give you a little background on both of the guests here. Among many things, Mark Victor Hansen is known as the chicken soup for the soul guy. Along with his co-author and business partner, Jack Canfield, they launched what Time Magazine later called the publishing phenomenon of the decade, with over 500 million Chicken Soup for the Soul books sold worldwide. Making it one of the most successful publishing franchises of all time, probably like the millennium, for crying out loud. He's also written a number of other bestsellers as well. He's a successful and impactful keynote speaker who's addressed audiences around the world and has been featured in the New York Times as well as by Oprah, CNN, The Today Show. The list goes on and on. Okay, now let's talk about Crystal. Crystal Dwyer Hansen she's a successful entrepreneur as well as a certified life coach and wellness nutrition expert. Her first book, called Skinny Life, The Secret to Physical, Emotional, and Spiritual Fitness, along with her speaking, video programs, audio books, and articles, have helped people around the world. And finally, I got to say, Mark and Crystal are both innovative entrepreneurs and tireless philanthropists. And if I dug into all that they're up to, guys, this intro would be 45 minutes long. So we're going to point you to their websites in the show notes so that you can dig deeper into their endeavors. Trust me, you'll want to do it. You'll be inspired. Obviously, they're up to some great work, so I'm excited to have them on. So let's get to this. Mark and Crystal, welcome to Dream Think Do.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm out of breath. I told you before we hit record, I said when I was doing research, literally it would have been easy for that intro to be 45 minutes. You guys have been busy.
We have.
We think it behooves everyone to be busy, especially now, because if you're idle, you get in trouble.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And before we go too deep, I do want to check in. I mean, as we're recording this, we're in the kind of the wildness of COVID-19 and learning about kind of this new normal. How are you guys doing amid all of this?
Well, we're actually doing okay, to be honest with you. I think, we spend our first part of the morning in meditation and prayer, and it really keeps us grounded. And we just realize and understand that as much as we want to panic and the world feels out of control right now, we have to focus on those things that we can control.
Yep.
And then if we're able to do that and remember that, we also can remember that this is a very unique time. If you look at it in a different way,
Yeah.
I mean, pretend we don't have, this pandemic going on. This is a time where we have, time to work on ourselves. We have weeks and weeks where there's nothing else to do. So might as well, we've gotten rid of all the distractions. What can we do that we would have wanted to do, that we've said we've always wanted to do, to make ourselves better or get to the next level, right?
Exactly. Absolutely. And it is. I mean, it's that whole thing. Both our boys are older, but they're sheltering with us right now, which is part of the gift of this thing. And we were talking about that very subject last night, is kind of control what you can control and take it one day at a time, because there's a lot of the wildness comes from not knowing, right? And really in life, we never really know. We just have more normal things we can predict. Right now, some of those things are just not there. So it's being able to say, okay, even in all this wildness, to be able to say, what do we want to focus on? What do we want to do? What do we want to kind of emerge from this season having done? So I love that.
So
Now, go ahead.
Well, sorry, I didn't mean to walk over.
No, you're good.
Crystal and I are saying, look, you got to ask yourself, the subtitle of our book is Ask, the Bridge from Your Dreams to Your Destiny. We're asking, everyone's got to look as what is their destiny, which fits dreams here perfectly, because everyone's got to have that. And then if there's going to be a new normal, what is it you're going to do? Number one, what do you love to do?
Yep.
And what are you best at? And then most importantly, number three is, what can you do to bring substantial pay by giving massive value to the marketplace? And because these are entrepreneurs, they take low value and make it high value to themselves, a future of fortune, and hopefully create a future and a fortune.
That is awesome. I love how you diving right into questions, because Dream Think Doers, boy, we're all about asking the right questions. So I love this. Now, before we dive into some of the content, because it's so rich, I would imagine that as you're writing this, you weren't thinking, you know what, let's launch a book in the middle of a pandemic, right? Like, oh my gosh, this will be perfect, right? So, as you were writing this, or especially as you were getting ready to launch this book, how did it hit you in that how this subject was still wildly important for this season that we're in, even though you probably weren't writing it for it, but to be able to say, all right, as you settle on it and then the time frame, to be able to say, why is this an important subject right now?
Right. Well, when we started writing it, Mitch, we started noticing people. They're kind of separated into two groups. Both groups are smart, likable, often educated. They have so much going on. They want great things for themselves. But where the separation comes in is this group is sort of getting what they want out of life, and this group is not. And so we said, what's the difference? They're all smart, likable, amazing. This group, it really came down to this. This group has learned to ask the right questions throughout their lives. And those questions have led to these breakthroughs. And that's what happens with questions. And then we broke it down further. We said, well, there are three channels through which you need to ask. And that is ask yourself, ask others, and ask God. So right now, it is kind of amazing, the timing. Like, there's not a better time to sit and start asking yourself, those questions. Ask others, the people who know more about what you want to do, or what you want to be. And then, of course, ask God, like, what is my greater purpose here?
Absolutely. So, I love it. I love it. So, it's interesting, especially in this subject, because, and in this time frame, because I think, and we talked about this before we hit record, that it is a wildly important time to dream. But I think for some people, it's a more difficult time to dream. Sometimes when, you don't have some of those known factors in place, or when things feel a little bit more risky, it might be harder for some people to dream. In fact, I had we did an episode on this, and somebody reached out and said, it's strange, but I almost feel guilty dreaming right now, knowing that a lot of people are hurting, or knowing some people are out of work, and a lot of people are scared. They almost feel guilty. What would you say to someone who's actually wrestling with whether they should be dreaming right now?
Well, first of all, that is exactly the position I was in 1974. I lost $2 million in one day, and I had to check a book at the library, how to go bankrupt by yourself. So I'm crystal clear what it's like to be in the have-not.
You've had some challenging seasons. Yeah.
Yeah. So my challenge was I was sleeping in a sleeping bag out in front of another guy's room until a room appeared at the house. And then for 6 months, I was freaked out, and it doesn't work. If you're freaked out, if you're scared, you shut down. And what dreaming does is opens you up. And when you open up tons of others. I mean, if you think about it, from my being there to now having sold 500 million books and probably have 1 billion readers, it's a whole different category. So in 1974, I'd sold my way through school and graduate school, and I listened to an audio tape. I never listened to it until I went upside down. And I listened to it, and all of a sudden I knew what I was supposed to do. I'd ask God, the three things. I asked God, what is my destiny? And he said, you're supposed to be a speaker. And I thought, wow, I love listening to these tapes. So I lived in Hicksville, Long Island, New York, went down to breakfast. I had 3 roommates. I said, look, you guys, I know you don't know this answer, but here's my question. Do you know anyone young, not a cotton top, not a celebrity, not a doctor, not a lawyer, that is speaking? And one of the guys said, yeah. John, the roommate, said, yeah, this kid is spiking out in Hauppauge. He's a few years older than you, but he is a wow. I jumped in my little beat up Volkswagen, the bankruptcy court's not taken, raced out there, was just in awe of this guy mesmerizing, I'm going to say 500 people, at the end of which I asked, because remember, you got to ask yourself, first of all, God said, yeah, your destiny is to do what I'm doing, is messages and communication to people that care, the things that matter, that'll make a life-changing difference. And now you got to ask others, because I asked myself if I was okay. Am I okay with that? Because I had no right to do what I was going to do.
Right.
Chip says, yeah, I'll teach you how to do it, but stay out of my market. You do, I'm doing real estate. You do life insurance business, a bottomless pit, 90% turnover. You'll never finish it. So he told me what to do, how to do it, and said, by the way, I'm gone 2 weeks. When I get back, you won't be here. 1 in 1,000 chance you're going to make it. So it's really not supportive. Right. Wow. And that's where the people are now. So you got to support yourself. You got to ask yourself, how can I give myself courage? And if they don't have courage, they got to remember that the three of us are giving you all the confidence, all the courage, all the self-esteem, all the belief. We have more belief in you all that we're going to come out of this. We're going to come out of it individually and collectively better than ever. There's more opportunity ever. Remember, it's not just us shut down. It's 8 billion people alive. I think that's the number on our planet.
Right.
And we have to serve them. And it's America that has to serve them. And America, I know there's broadcasts everywhere, but basically America's
where we're at. Yeah, absolutely. To be able to say, hey, that's our place. This is our opportunity. We got to do it.
Yeah,
and
help.
Dreaming is about leadership, and leadership starts with self-leadership. So you got to say, am I willing to be courageous? What that question was, am I willing to overcome my adversity, overcome the odds? Am I willing to ask myself, how do I get to be the bigger, higher, better self to go where I got to go? Because we have nothing but resistance. 144 publishers told Jack and I way later in my life, you know, they all said, hit the road, Jack. I said, look, I'm a nice guy, even if he's not. You know,
That's right. That is amazing. The story of Chicken Soup for the Soul, you know, to see the phenomenon that it is. But I know that the very strategies we're talking about right here are really what helped to make that phenomenon happen. Was you guys, you didn't wait for somebody else to give you permission to do it. You said, hey, we believe this is possible. And you set out amid well, it was 144 official no's or whatever it was to say, no, all we need is a yes, and to keep going, which is just amazing to think about that. I don't know anybody that's not read or seen a Chicken Soup for the Soul book, let alone 5 or 10 of them. So I've got a countless number on my shelf. So I love it. So let's dive into specifically, I know we're talking about 3 different groups of questions and the kinds of questions for each. So let's break this down. I know you talk about the questions we ask ourselves, the questions we ask others, and the questions we ask God. So let's talk about that sequence. Where do you generally suggest people start?
You know, for us, we always start with the broad picture, and it can, you know, these things happen. They interplay with each other. You're always
absolutely
this order up all the time.
Yeah.
But we always start off. Obviously, we like to have a bigger picture of our life. So we always, like I said, wake up every day and meditate and just say, you know, sometimes when it's like taking the camera lens and zooming back, because you get so caught up. We all do in the minutia of our lives. So for us, stepping back and saying, it's not all about me. I'm part of something so much bigger here.
Yep.
And honestly, there's something so comforting about that, because when we're all so wrapped up in our own, like, oh, if I fail, everything fails. No, it's like, we're part of something bigger. So how do we play into this universe, this world, this kingdom? How do we play our part in this purpose? What is the kingdom purpose? What is the purpose of this universe and this world? And how can we fit into that in the most wonderful, amazing way? And all of us have gifts. I mean, we're all more than over-endowed with talent and abilities. And so it's really about asking, how do I use what I'm made with? How do I tap into that? And that's our biggest question every day, like in our meditation. How do we use whatever gifts and talents you've given us, whatever gifts and talents we were made with, or abilities? How can we use that to make the world better, make ourselves better, our children, our family, and the world, and contribute? And there's something really beautiful about that, you know, becoming part of that bigger picture. So for us, it's that's where we start. And then of course, the next thing for sure is yourself. The questions you ask yourself are some of the most important questions you'll ever ask in your life. And you need to keep asking them. When something's not working in your life, you need to sit down in a quiet place and ask yourself, you know, what is not working for me?
Yeah.
What am I feeling about this situation, and why? What do I really want to do with my life? What do I think I'm good at? What lights me up? What makes me feel like what I'm doing isn't work? It's more of an expression. How do I find my greatest expression?
Yeah.
Because we're really here to not just work, we're here to express. And so finding out the things you're good at, but also the things you love, because it's like I say sometimes, you know, I'm pretty good at like bookkeeping. I have a bookkeeper, but I can, you know, do some books, and
God bless you.
That's
not mine. Exactly.
I don't like it. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's that, you know, you can be good at something and not like it. Okay.
Yep.
And there's some necessary tasks we all have to do, but what am I good at that I love, that feels more like expression,
Yeah.
rather than work. And, you know, and then just keep asking those questions. And we say for the ask yourself part, the most important thing you can do is go to your imagination. We have a section in the book called Prepare to be a Good Asker. So there are 3 things you need. You need belief. So
Yeah.
going into these questions, it's so important to believe I will get my answer. As long as I keep asking, I will receive an answer. My answers are out there. So belief is the first one. Action is the second one. We can't just ask the questions and then sit on the couch and cover our heads with a blanket and go, oh, I hope it all works out. Go out there and take some action in the areas that you're interested in. Who's doing it? What are they doing? How are they doing it? When did they start? Who would I talk to? How can I find out more?
Yeah.
Just question after question after question. Immerse yourself in that quantum soup of what it is you want to be doing. If you want to be a top 10 recording artist, go out there, figure out who's doing it. How did they do it? What did they do? What are they saying? All of those things. And then the next one is imagination. So we say always start with your imagination, because we all get stuck. And when we get stuck, it's awful sometimes, because we shut down, we don't see a way forward. We just are on like a hamster wheel, and we just start to sort of collapse into our stuckness. So this is the time you really need to use your imagination.
Yeah.
Because our imagination is better at getting than our rational mind. It dreams big, it can create. It's the creative part of us. So use it. Create your greatest vision of what you want and let it flow, let it fly, let it be amazing. And then when you do that, all of those questions start to flood in. Like you reverse engineer it. How did I get here? Who did I talk to? What am I doing? And start asking those questions.
And write it down.
And of course, write it down. The writing down part is so important. There's actually a lot of research on that.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And I think what I love is it's this combination of actually, you know, specific steps, but I also hear you training your brain, right? Like I think the brain is amazing, and it almost can't help itself. When it gets a good question, it can't help itself but to dive into it. I always say the brain functions a lot like Google. Like you give Google a phrase or a question, it's going to come up with results. And the brain is that same thing, where you like put in a search term, it's going to keep searching until it gets results. So I love that. I want to backtrack though, because there was so much gold in there. So go after that. So one of the things that I loved about when you're talking about waking up every day, it was subtle, but I think it was so powerful. I don't want Dream Think Doers to miss this. You know, you were talking about, it's not about me. It's, you know, I'm a part of a bigger picture, and I totally agree with that. I start every day with prayer. But I think one word that you added there that was so critical was, all right, what am I going to do? What am I called to do today? Right? I think sometimes when we pray, it can be these big, expansive in life, or, you know, kind of these kind of questions without end, where it's like, when you add the phrase, what do I do today? It's amazing how then that fills in, you know, specificity.
The asking then puts you in the electrifying result getting business, rather than, oh, poor me, and ain't it awful? And
exactly.
I want to do a subset on hers. Is that the trouble is that when I went bankrupt, what I learned is that my self-esteem is different than my net worth, and my self-worth totally different. We got people jumping out of windows now and stuff like that, because the stock market has gone down, and they've attached. We just had a major banker who will go unnamed, you know, have a major heart attack because you lost $2 billion in a day, and yet he's probably still got $6 billion. So it's irrelevant. I mean, relative, his food, that's where we started this whole show. And we were talking to you before we began, is it, all of us got eyes, our skin's still okay, our food is basically there. Most of us are doing pretty good. In the worst cases in America, you still got toilet paper for most of us. You know,
yeah, hopefully, right? Good Lord.
Yeah,
we'll get some.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. There's so many jokes going around that are cutting my head that I got to give those books that they don't like that you can rip. And I won't name any.
Right, exactly. Those will remain nameless as well.
That's right.
But I want to talk about being isolated that you asked about, and meditation. One of our students and friends is a guy named Jim Stovall, and at 19 years old, he was all set. He'd spent his life preparing. You may know Jim is ready to be an NFL superstar, and he gets recruited. His whole dream come true, and the doctor says, "Look, kid, I'm sorry to tell you this, but in 6 months you're going to be permanently, forever blind." Well, now he's in self-incarcerated in a 9-by-12 room, and he's got a telephone
Kind of like we are.
and a television and a radio. And his parents said, look, Jimmy, you got to go to the blind meeting. Maybe they can get you out of this doldrum. Well, he goes there and there's nothing but nagging, bitching, and complaining. So he sits next to a blind lady who is a stenographer for a law firm. And he says, I used to love to watch movies and TV and see action and see when there's a right hook. Somebody ought to do something about that. She looks at him and says, why somebody? We're somebody. Why can't we do something about that? And only because we're sighted, most people watching aren't going to know, but they created narrative television, which is like streaming television for the blind. It does action like throwing a right hook or squealing tires to 14 million people a day. Now that'd be good if that's all there was to Jim's story. And that alone is good because every one of us has got to ask that, why can't I do something? And back to your question, why can't I do something today?
Right.
Because Jim started it against nobody. He didn't know anything about TV or narrating or streaming when he started that. Now he's helping 14 million blind people around the world. But when I got along meeting him, one of my colleagues said, you got to endorse this book. I said, man, I'm selling 15 million books a year. I am so busy, you can't believe it. He said, this book will change your life. It's called The Ultimate Gift. I read it and I said, this is the most powerful message I've ever seen in a book that's a parable, and it should be a movie because this guy's done it. Well, we interviewed him for our book, Ask the Bridge from Your Dreams to Your Destiny. And what he says is, now I write books that I can't read. And I make movies that I can't watch. And his movie just grossed $100 million, The Ultimate Gift. So, everybody can get in their pity party like you're saying that. But I'm saying get out of your pity party. And we're saying there's only one pivotal way to do that, and that's asking, why can't I do something? And why can't I do something now? And why can't I call on others to help me? And why can't I talk to God and say, hey, look, God, I'm willing to go to prayer. I'll surrender right now. The luck's not so good right now, seemingly, but you got to quit listening to the doomsdayers and listen to us, the people that are saying, hey, dream big or dream bold or dream wise or dream smarter. There's bigger, better opportunities out there for you right now. And God's telling you it's time to make a little transition, a pivot. Why not pivot is what we're saying.
Exactly. And I love that. And I think, talking through your steps of belief, action, imagination, or, the elements of that and the questions we ask ourselves, I think each one of those are bolstered when we hear stories like you guys' story, like, Jim's story. Like, that's why I even love Bible stories, right? Some of those stories are 2,000 years old, but you're like, these are amazing stories where somebody who was not wildly talented or maybe didn't always have the best morals or whatever was still, got to be used and work, God worked through them in amazing ways. And we get bolstered by hearing these stories to say, okay, that person, it just made a better story because they didn't have any money, or they didn't think they had any time, or they didn't have the right connections. That makes for a better story, right? Like, I'm living in a movie.
Exactly.
I'm telling, I'm a part of a really good story here. So I love that.
The story of Joseph and Many Colored Coat is a perfect first story in Genesis. Exactly. What you meant for my harm, God meant for my good. And everybody could say, well, you don't know how bad it is. No. If you think it's for your harm, you're going to shut down your system. You're going to stop dreaming. You're stop believing. Stop what Crystal's talking about. Using the biggest room in the world is a room called imagination.
Right.
And we're saying, hey, wait a second. There's only one way into imagination, which is what you articulated accurately. As far as we're concerned, asking is the impactful tool and technique that no one's really explored in depth until we came along. I don't want to take too much credit. We thought of it and said, hey, wait a second. If asking is the most important thing, how do you do it? And no one's ever decided to put it in the compendium of a book, which is available at Amazon and Barnes and Noble and everywhere. And we're just so thankful that we got to do it. And the stories we're getting back from people are just beyond amazing. A guy wrote, he said, I never read a book before, and I read your book until 2 o'clock in the morning, and now I reread it when I got up this morning, and now I'm reading it to my kids.
Daughter.
And I can't take my breath, because for the first time, asking is taking my breath away, because now I have a tool.
Yep.
And that's what we wanted. You know, that's why we did it. When we realized how powerful this was, we started thinking about it in terms of other people's stories, thinking about asking in terms of our own stories. And we're like, that is the one tool. If we could break life down to that one tool that we all have, we're all born with it.
Right.
but it gets shut down. I'll tell you, Mitch, it really gets shut down in all of us. And we did a ton of research for this book, and the studies show that we're all shut down. We're actually afraid to ask.
Yep.
And the perception, Harvard did a study with the participants going into the study. It shows that people perceive that if they ask a lot of questions, they're going to be perceived to be stupid, ignorant, nosy, whatever. And the outcome of the study showed just the opposite. When you're a person who is more curious, you ask more questions, you seek more information, you're actually more likable to your business colleagues.
Yeah.
You're more likable to, even on a date. They did asking for daters. You're more likely to get a second date if you
Hello, right?
Right.
Sell it. Absolutely. It's so true. I think one of my mentors in life gave me some of the most important advice I've ever received, and it goes right to asking questions. He said, never focus on being interesting. Always focus on being interested.
Bingo.
And when you interact with other people, it's that whole thing. If we think we have to have all the information, we're not going to be all that interesting. But if we're interested in someone's story, interested in their know-how, their wisdom, you'll be the most interesting person in the room. So I love it. I love it. I am so glad we've got 4 hours for this interview. We could have 4 hours, but we're going to start to wrap it up. I'm going to ask one last question. I know, we've talked about kinds of questions we're talking with God about, the kinds of questions we should be asking ourselves. But as we wrap it up, I want to go after those questions we can ask others. And I know that that's a really important part. So as we transition there, I'm going to do a little product placement here. Guys, the book is called Ask: The Bridge from Your Dreams to Your Destiny. Mark Victor Hansen and his wife, Crystal Dwyer Hansen. That's who we've been talking with. So bring us home. When we're thinking about asking and we're talking with others, why is that so important? And what are a couple of key questions to be asking?
So I love this. And especially, let me just focus on business, because we have all these different segments in our book: relationships, health and wellness, and business. But for business, it's so important. I think people are a little freaked out about what's happening in their businesses or going to happen. But and this is told through some of the stories in our book, but oftentimes when we're doing business, the first impulse is to go in and tell everybody how great what we're selling is, our product, our service. This is what I have. This is why you need it. This is what it's going to do for you. Boom, boom, boom. And so we sort of impose everything we think that they are going to want onto the person that we want to buy whatever we're selling, or participate in whatever service we're offering. If we just stop and you can basically do a broad brush stroke about why your product or service has a high quality and a good track rating, but then you want to immediately shift to question asking. Can you tell me more about your business? Can you tell me your pain points? If I were to solve some of your biggest problems, what would those be? And what would be of the most help and service to you? And if we all started business that way, our success rate for closing and I would say not even closing, because that sounds manipulative, but achieving successful business relationships, because that's what it's about. And if you don't ask questions, it's not a relationship. You're just shoving what you want onto somebody else. And those same principles apply in relationships, whatever, but so important to remember that.
It is so wildly important. And what I love about that too is that approach. Sometimes I think people are a little scared to say, okay, well, what if they say, isn't what I got to sell, right? Like, what if their response is, don't point me in the direction? It's like, well, you can still be a resource, right?
Sure.
You can still point them towards other products or services that you're aware of. Be a resource, because if you're in it for the long term, if you're a resource, that builds a relationship where when there is a connection, when you do have a product or a service, you'll be that first person that they can help. So I love that. I love that. What's one last piece of advice that you guys would give when it comes to asking a better question?
I think it's back to be prayerful and meditative and reflective and cogitate, ruminate, and meditate. And what are those questions you're going to ask? And do that first thing in the morning, first for yourself, then as you all picture your whole day. And what is it that you want to accomplish? And when you get really good at that, what we've learned about asking is exactly what you enunciated a while ago. you wake up brain cells. They actually literally pop with illumination, pop with revelation, pop with understanding. Because the big word is the mind is teleological, old Maxwell Maltz, Dr. Maltz, psychocybernetics. And what Max said, I was a little student of Max's long ago. I never thought about that until now. But he said, because your mind is teleological, the minute you ask, you're going to find the answer. You're just going to go find it. It's waiting for you. That's what's so exciting. And I say, you can't ask for something that you won't ultimately, inevitably, one way or another get if you're in sincere asking. It is inevitable.
Yeah, I love it. Ugh. All right. Well, I'm going to have you guys back because we could go for another 4 hours. So I so appreciate it. Love what you guys are doing. Rooting for you, cheering for you. I know that's going to have this yet another successful book that's going to have a big, big impact. So thanks for what you guys are doing. Keep it up.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Happy to be here.